Here are my confidence picks for college football in Week 10 for all of the Power 4 games. Standings through Week 9. After a lackluster start to October, I've rounded back out and started kicking ass right now. Went 6 at least. Did have no more than 2 losses in any of the conferences this past week, and we're at least 6 games above 500 in every single conference, including the Big 12. ACC and the Big 10 were absolutely killing it, at least 30 games above 500 in both those conferences as well as the SEC. So let's have another good week. Start out with the Big 12 for this week. Only have 5 games to go over. My most confident pick is Kansas State over Houston. They're 13-point favorites. I picked against Houston almost every single game this season. They actually upset 2 of the last 3 games. I do not think they'll upset Kansas State. I think Kansas State has an outside chance of getting back to the Big 12 championship game. I think they're going to continue over Houston. Number 4, Iowa State over Texas Tech. 2 touchdown favorite for the Cyclones over the Red Raiders. Texas Tech lost a very close game last week in TCU. I don't think they have an upset this week. I think Iowa State continues their roll, remains undefeated. Number 3, UCF over Arizona. Arizona was one of the best teams against the spread last year. They've actually been one of the worst teams against the spread this year. UCF should have won the last 2 games, or they were really close, or a lot of it. But I think they're going to actually get back in the win column on this one over the Wildcats of Arizona. Number 2, Arizona State over Oklahoma State. Even on the road, I think Arizona State is just playing better ball than Oklahoma State right now. They're just the Pokes are just in a bad situation. They're 0-5 in conference, and I just don't see them rebounding, even this one against the Sun Devils. And number 1, my least confident pick is TCU over Baylor. It's basically a toss-up. TCU beat Texas Tech last week. Not much else to say. I think they're going to just win a slight underdog, 3 points to the Baylor Bears. Moving on to the Big 10 now. There's 8 games. Most confident pick, yes. Nebraska over UCLA. Now, they're only a 6-point favorite, but the way they played against Ohio State last week and the way that teams on the West Coast traveling to the East Coast have played, I just feel like there's no way that Nebraska is going to lose this game. Number 7, Indiana over Michigan State. I probably should have put this game a little lower because Michigan State thrives in these kind of moments when they're the absolute underdog. Nobody's picking them to win. They always seem to pull it out. But this Indiana team's just different, and I think they're going to pull it off even on the road. As only 8-point favorite. Number 6, Oregon over Michigan. I think Michigan might cover this spread, and they're going to surprise a lot of people, but I can't see Oregon losing to Michigan, even how good Michigan looked last week, their whole season, and Michigan's defense can hold up a little bit with Oregon. They need to have their best game of the season. I just don't see them having it first week in November. Number 5, Illinois against Minnesota. Very surprising spread for this one. They're actually an underdog at home to Minnesota. I'm going to take them to cover the 3 points and win outright over the Golden Gophers. I just think Illinois is a much better team than Minnesota. Number 4, Northwestern over Purdue. This game is an absolute toss-up in reference to the spread. I just think Purdue is the worst team in the Big Ten, and Northwestern, they played a lot of close games with some decent teams, and I think they're going to win by at least a couple scores over the Boilermakers. Number 3, Wisconsin over Iowa. This one was a tough pick because Iowa's playing at home, but Wisconsin's just playing really good. They had a very bad second half against Penn State last week, even at home. But I think they're going to cover the 3 points and win on the road at Iowa in this traditional Big Ten West matchup. Number 2, the big game of the year in the Big Ten. Ohio State taking on Penn State. I think they're going to win as a road favorites in Happy Valley. It's a noon game. This is a night game. It might be a little different, but I think the Buckeyes are going to prevail. Give Penn State their 1 and only loss of this regular season so far. Number 1, USC over Washington. Another toss-up game. Traditional Pac-12 teams. I just think USC, even on the road, has the advantage over the Huskies. Going on to the ACC right now. Only 6 games. Most confident pick this week is Miami over Duke. They're a 3-touchdown favorite. Duke choked against SMU. Probably should have beat them, especially with the late field goal. And Miami's just playing lights out. They're just not slowing down. I think they're going to cover against Duke Blue Devils. Number 5, Clemson over Louisville. If this game was on the road at Louisville, I might consider pulling the upset trigger with Louisville. But it's at Clemson, and Louisville is just, they found ways to lose this season, even though they were one of the toughest outs, power rated wise. I think Clemson's going to continue undefeated in the ACC. Number 4, SMU over Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh is a very, I wouldn't say overrated team, but they haven't really been tested. SMU is just looking really good as of late. I think they're going to win as a home favorite against Pittsburgh Panthers. Number 3, NC State over Stanford. Not much else to say. Teams that travel 2 time zones are not well. Stanford is one of the few teams that actually won a game outright when they travel a time zone, but I don't think they do it again. especially going from Cali to North Carolina. NC State wins. Number 2, VT over Syracuse. VT's been looking good. Another team was looking good the last month or so. Syracuse has gone the opposite direction fast. I mean, Kyle McCord had 5 interceptions last game. I think VT prevails over Syracuse and still has an outside chance at getting to the ACC championship game with only 1 loss in conference. Number 1, UNC over Florida State. This was difficult because I have no idea about either of these two teams. UNC had that big win against Virginia last week, but they're on the road at Florida State, who have finally changed their quarterback. I'm just going to take UNC. I want Florida State to win actual game, but I don't know, man. They're just one of the worst teams I've seen in Power 4 history. I think UNC is going to beat them. Finally, the SEC. 7 games. Oklahoma's going to beat Maine. I mean, I'm not going to go over this. It's an FCS team. Number 6, Mississippi State over UMass. Basically an FCS team. Not much else to say. Mississippi State's the worst team in the SEC, but UMass has been the worst program in the last decade in FBS. Number 5, Georgia over Florida. Georgia destroyed, I wouldn't say destroyed, but they definitely outplayed Texas from whistle to whistle. And I think they're going to beat Florida, even though Florida's been doing much better than a lot of people thought with their strength of schedule. I just don't see them upsetting Georgia. Number 4, Tennessee over Kentucky. Kentucky has let me down each of the last 3 weeks, and Tennessee has been one of the teams that has an outside shot at getting to the SEC championship game. I'm going to take the Volunteers, especially at home. Number 3, Ole Miss over Arkansas. I'm not going to say much else. I think Ole Miss is a very good team. Arkansas is a very tough out. I just see our Ole Miss not dropping another one before they get to Georgia. I think they're a good team, and this can be a close game, though. I think Arkansas covers. Number 2, Vandy over Auburn. Once again, Vanderbilt is a underdog, and I think I'm going to pick them outright finally this time. Auburn has just not shown me anything this year. Vandy has been one of the more surprising teams, obviously. The way they played Texas last week is an 18-point underdog, only lost by 3. This team's for real, and they should be not joking around with, especially with Auburn as a favorite. And number 1, Texas A&M over South Carolina. This game was tough because South Carolina obliterated Oklahoma a couple weeks ago, and Texas A&M destroyed LSU in that second half. As you can see, the spread is only 2.5 points. A&M's on the road. This will be I think, a pretty lit environment. South Carolina is one of their biggest games of the year. They choked one away against LSU early in the year, and I don't think they're going to prevail in this one. I think it's still going to be a close game. Might be within a field goal. Texas A&M comes away with the victory, though.